Story 1. When I worked in retail and someone called into our store, they asked me what size their feet were. I mean, I was used to some stupid customers, but wow, that phone call was something else. Story 2. I was training a server in a restaurant. She was staring at the soda machine and asked me, "Do we have Coca-Cola or Pepsi products?" We only had 6 soft drinks and they were labeled. It literally said Coca-Cola on the machine. Story 3. About 25 years ago, I was explaining time zones to a 20-year-old intern at a large scientific agency. She wasn't understanding it, so I got an orange I brought for lunch and used it as the Earth. Me, okay, pretend this is the Earth. The sun only shines on one side, so it's day on approximately half at any given time. Now, since the Earth rotates, as I spin the orange, intern, so wait, hold on. So you're saying the Earth is round? I wish I was joking. Story 4. Back when I lived with my parents, a relative called our home phone landline and asked if we were at home. It's stuck with me ever since. Story 5. Of the many, this one springs to mind right now. I had an employee once. She had to do the opening up procedure but was constantly last minute in, sometimes late. I had to put in some extra hours, so at some point, I would arrive much earlier. One day, she comes in at the last minute, opens up, settles in, makes a cup of coffee, and nonchalantly stands in my doorway and asks, "Since you're here earlier than me, would you mind opening up?" I gave her a look and didn't say anything. She left soon after. Story 6. Wait, you're married? To a woman? Not a particularly stupid question in and of itself, but the reasoning for it was that he had learned earlier in the conversation that I'm a vegetarian and was surprised to learn I have a wife because being a vegetarian doesn't seem like something a straight guy would do. Story 7. I'm colorblind, which is the only disability that people feel the need to test. Someone asked, "So if I painted myself green, would I be invisible?" But he was never very bright. Story 8. From a 16-year-old, fire doesn't burn you as long as you go through it fast enough. That's why firefighters don't get burned. I wanted to put my head through a wall after hearing that. Story 9. Broke my nose playing flag football in high school. Went to the nurse's office. Blood all over my shirt, hand, and face. She's on the phone when I walk in. I was literally waving a blood-covered hand to get her attention. She eventually hangs up, looks at me with the most empty-headed smile, and says something along the lines of, "What can I do for you?" I'm thinking, you're a nurse. You don't see all this blood. All I did was ask to use her sink. Cracked my nose back into place, washed up, and told her to call my dad to pick me up. I was flabbergasted. Story 10. I used to work at Long John Silver's. This woman would bring her husband in weekly and order a plate with 2 fish, 3 chicken, and 2 sides. She would always freak out and ask why it was all on one plate. She never asked for it to be separated. She would scream that her husband was deathly allergic to fish, so it needed to be on a separate plate. I'm thinking, why on earth are you taking your husband to eat at a fish restaurant every week? Go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Story 11. Conversation at a store. We're out of that particular soda. Random customer. Oh, it doesn't just come from the coolers? No, ma'am. Products don't just magically appear and spawn here. Weird. Huh. Story 12. I work in a local coffee shop. I've been asked twice if we sell coffee. Like, no, all the coffee brewers, coffee signs on the windows, and bags of coffee beans lining the shelves are purely to play a prank on you. I also had a customer ask me how to brew coffee. He bought a bag of beans and asked me, "What's the best way to make this?" I asked what he meant and he goes, "So should I just throw the beans in a filter and pour water over the top or what?" I said, "Well, it needs to be ground up first." And he says, "Cool, thanks." Then left before I could offer to grind it for him. I haven't seen him since, and sometimes I wonder if he ever figured it out. Story 13. Seeing a patient in the emergency room for an admission in late 2021 with COVID-19. On 45 liters per minute of oxygen, heavy smokers with portable oxygen are on 2 liters per minute. He laughed when I asked him if he got the vaccine. Then he asked me how soon he would be discharged. Out of the two of us, only I can talk about that conversation now. Story 14. This is very localized, but I used to work in tourism in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. There's a large island called Vancouver Island that runs along the coastline and spans the western horizon. It takes about 2 hours on a ferry to get there. You'd be amazed at how many American tourists asked if that island was Japan. Story 15. Working through my mother's estate after she died in the middle of 2020. On the phone with a customer service representative. I had started the call by saying, "My mother has died, and my sister and I are the beneficiaries on this account. Can you help me figure out what to do next?" 2 sentences later from the customer service representative. "And is your mother there with you now?" I managed not to cry or curse him out. But good God. Story 16. How do I get there? I work in an airport, and it's astounding how often people will ask less than half a question and expect you to figure it out. I have no idea if you're flying or leaving, what airline you're on, if you're looking for the bathroom or concessions or the restaurant or the ticketing counter. Story 17. When I served in the army, we soldiers rather called each other by nicknames instead of our actual names. It could be some appearance feature, trait, or something else. I was usually called by the name of the town I came from. Quite famous here, indeed. Then there was a guy who asked, "Why do they call you town name?" Plot twist. That was the dude who first started calling me thus. Story 18. Whenever somebody says, "There is no such thing as a stupid question," I put both hands up and wave them frantically, compounded with some oh, pick me sounds. When called on, I ask, "Do I like pie?" Story 19. I was once asked about an electrically powered generator. The person elaborated, like how we have gas-powered leaf blowers and electric-powered leaf blowers. They asked why we didn't have electric generators that you could plug your house into. I asked if they were talking about the power stations or solar panel setup, and they were adamant they did not mean those. Story 20. 17 years working in electronics at Walmart. I was asked many different times questions that basically boiled down to, what product in here can I buy that will let me steal one of my neighbor's internet because I'm too much of an entitled, petty, cheap idiot to just buy my own? Some specific questions and statements. Hey, one of our neighbors has Wi-Fi without a password on it, but they live on the other end of our street, so we can't actually pick it up in our house. Is there something we can buy that will just pull their Wi-Fi into our house? The internet is just there. It's floating around in the air. I shouldn't have to pay somebody for it. Nobody owns the internet. There has to be a way to just pull it down into my phone or computer. Sir, you have been arguing with me for 45 minutes. I've had enough. It's not illegal for me to use someone else's internet if they are beaming it into my home. It's not my fault if I can pick it up. Now, are you going to tell me how to get past their password so I can use their Wi-Fi or not? And that's not counting all of the people who would just straight up ask if I could tell them how to steal internet service. Story 21. I was 8 and I ordered a peanut butter parfait at Dairy Queen. The cashier looked at me dubiously and said, "Are you sure you can eat all that?" I said, "Of course." And my mom said, "Of course." And the cashier bet us I couldn't or it was on her. Walked out without paying a dime. It was freaking ice cream and I was 8. In what world is an 8-year-old not going to finish ice cream? Story 22. I worked in a paint and wallpaper store many years ago and got a phone call from someone who seriously asked if we sold paint in cans. I have always wanted credit for not saying, "No, only by the handful." Story 23. Worked in a card shop around Christmas. A woman said there are Christmas cards for people named Joy and Noel. Then she asked if I have any Christmas cards for someone named Patrick. Story 24. I made strawberries and cream for my ex. I told her it was strawberries and cream. She then asked me what was in it. I told her again, "It's strawberries and cream." She asks again, "Yeah, but what is it made with?" "It's made with strawberries and cream, Lucy." Story 25. During a meeting with my old boss, we were talking about plans for the holidays, and someone said they miss summertime. The boss said, "Well, with global warming, there won't be a summer pretty soon. It will be winter all year long." This guy was the sales director for the entire company. Actually, 90% of the stuff he said was ridiculous. The higher I climbed the corporate ladder, the dumber people got. Story 26. I am a receptionist at a veterinarian's office. I had someone call in because they were giving their dog his medications after a procedure. They said that the dog took the white one and the round one, but the yellow one broke open in his mouth and he spat it all out, and asked if it is safe to give him another one. I asked which drug they were referring to. They repeated that they were talking about the yellow one. I said, "Cool. What's the drug name on the bottle?" "Oh, I don't know. I'll go check. I just know that it's the yellow one." Every time this dog has needed medications, they refer to each medication by its appearance instead of the drug name. Do I know which drug they are talking about? I have a pretty good idea. The medical chart is right in front of me. But guys, we are talking about putting chemicals into your animal's body. It is in everyone's best interest, but mostly yours and your dog's, if everyone involved knows exactly which chemical we are talking about. I am not going to roll the dice and hope I guess the right one. Thank you. Story 27. In high school, a girl once asked me how I straightened my very long hair. I pulled it around my shoulder to the front of my body. This had seemingly never occurred to her, who must have been arching her arm around her back to pull a hair straightener downward. Story 28. I mean, this is slightly stupid, but still funny because of how much it happened. Working in the restaurant industry, I'd always get asked, "What kind of cheese is in the gorgonzola pear salad?" Or the avocado chicken would come out as a sandwich and people would say things like, "Oh, why is this on a bun?" And I'd have to ask them what they meant. Inevitably, they ordered the avocado chicken sandwich under the sandwich header section of the menu, and they didn't understand it was a sandwich. It happened way too often. Story 29. The one that comes to mind for me is when, in high school grade 11, a girl straight up asked me, "Is Japan in Italy?" We were doing a project for geography. Unlikely she passed. Story 30. Retail worker here. A customer looks at an aisle of just frames with 5 buy 1 get 1 free signs, picks up a frame and proceeds to ask me if it is buy 1 get 1 free. Yes, it is. Picks up a frame right next to the first one, asks if that one is buy 1 get 1 free. Yes, it is. I proceed to explain that all the frames in that aisle are buy 1 get 1 free, including the third frame that he picked up next to the other two. Story 31. A young American girl visiting Germany asked me how Germany had such modern things like the United States since Germany is such an old country. I did not know how to respond. Story 32. Second example happens almost every day. I work in a very popular coffee shop attached to a department store. Lights are on. Chairs aren't up on the tables. My coworker and I are in uniform behind the register, and people will ask, "Are you open?" Likewise, all the lights are off. Chairs are up on tables. Everything is torn down or covered up. "Are you open?" Story 33. In high school, another student, upon learning I was Jewish, asked, "So that means you were there when Jesus died, right?" I did not know what to say to that other than, "No." Story 34. Standing on the Oregon coast at night, someone pointed at the fishing boat lights, maybe 10 or 12, and asked, "Is that Japan?" Another time at the coast, standing about 10 feet above the beach, someone asked, "What's the elevation here?" Story 35. My office keeps a spreadsheet of our clients' start dates, so we can send them anniversary gifts periodically. I was training a new person and she asked, "So, how do I know if a client has been added to the list?" The answer was, "You would look at the list." Story 36. At Aldi, an old lady had already put 2 dimes in the slot in the cart and asked me how to also fit the nickel in there. I had to tell her it took quarters only. Story 37. I was riding my old motorcycle all over the country, the United States. Somewhere in one of the desert states, I stopped in this dusty little town. I was just going to put some gas in the tank and get on my way, so I left my helmet on and went inside to pay for gas. The person behind the counter looked at me, my helmeted head, and asked, "Are you on a motorcycle?" I'm pretty quick-witted, so I looked confused for a second and then said, "Oh no, my mom just makes me wear this." Story 38. A prank caller contacted my job and asked if we found a dildo in our lost and found that had Bernie Sanders 2016 written on it. Then he said he was going to use it and feel the burn. Story 39. I am biracial. My father is black and my mother is white. In high school, I was asked by a classmate if I will marry a black guy or a white guy. She then quickly added that it was an option for me to have two choices, unlike her. My answer: I think I'll marry an Asian man. She didn't know how to respond to that. Story 40. Went to New York with my high school band class for our senior trip. We were out to dinner and then we were going to the top of the Rock, also known as the Rockefeller Center. My classmate legitimately asked me during dinner, "So when are we going to the mountain?" This girl really thought we were going to scale a mountain in the middle of downtown Manhattan. Story 41. This is only because it is fresh on my mind, but I had a customer who said she was a retired accountant who didn't know what the word prorate meant. That's like a programmer not knowing the word compile. Story 42. Technically not a question, but we are a Saudi family. When I was young, my parents went to America because they had a scholarship, so I enrolled in an American school. The teachers loved me because I excelled much faster than the rest of the students, and second grade was my last year before going back to Saudi Arabia. My teacher asked my mom if I could please continue my education, considering how good of a student I was. She thought we didn't have schools for girls in Saudi Arabia, and my mother was shocked because she was also finishing her master's in America, but she reassured her everything would be fine. She was such a sweet teacher, so of course it was out of concern, but I still laugh a bit thinking about it.